As we witness vote sorting and counting as we speak right now in Kogi State, let's actually tell you that those that are vying to become governor of the state are Ahmed Ododo of the All Progressive Congress, Murtala Jaka of the Social Democratic Party, Senator Dino Melaye of the People's Democratic Party, and Leke Abejije of the African Democratic Congress, Olayinka Braimo of the Action Alliance. Those are the major political parties in the running to become the next party in Kogi State. So those are live pictures you can actually see across different polling units in Kogi State as sorting and counting has begun, which means that voting has actually been officially ended and now sorting and counting.
That's right. Now, of course, we know that Ayetoro is the home of PDP candidate Senator Dino Melaye, where he says he voted, but we did not get to witness. We're yet to see, to have any eyewitness accounts of him actually voting. However, he says that he has voted. Just to give you a recap, Kogi State has 1.93 million registered voters, but 1.83 million collected their PVC with 3,508 polling units. This time of the election is always very sensitive because, you know, we're looking at images of 1 or 2 polling units, and it's easy for people to get carried away and feel as though just because something happened at one particular place is reflective of the general election. 3,508 polling units. We have to keep that in mind, and that is why this part of the election is so sensitive, because we don't want anybody to get the wrong idea about what may transpire throughout the day. 21 local government areas, 18 candidates, as Aaron rightfully put it. And biggest issue out of Kogi State today, the issue of pre-recorded results sheets. We know that the results sheet is the beginning and the end of an election where evidence is concerned. We saw with the number of cases that ended up in the election tribunal. This piece of paper is your election, So the fact that there's reports, confirmed reports by INEC that there were some of these result sheets were tampered with, not a great indication, but great that INEC has, of course, come in and confirmed that they're aware of this. We're still waiting to know what the corrective measure will be. However, this is good to see. The process itself is not marred in every single polling unit of Kogi State. You can see the polling agents, party agents, are filling in the result sheets as they go. Very important part of the process.
Yeah, the question will be, what would it mean for the final collation and announcements of results for this particular off-cycle election in Kogi State if a particular local government, amongst the 21 local governments, talking about Madunagu local government, right now has a huge question mark on it in terms of electoral malpractice, literally. Of course, INEC have said in an official statement that they are investigating the allegations that have been made, and certainly we would like to hear from them soonest. The outcome of that particular investigation and what will become of this particular result and also this particular election, because Senator Dino Melaye has taken massive reservations to this and has actually spoken about the conduct of the election. Also, Ajaka, Mukhtar Ajaka of the SDP has also called out INEC and said, not just even in Madunagu, he has also mentioned that he actually got reports of electoral malpractice in Okene, Okehi, and Adavi local government areas in Kogi State. So at the moment, all eyes are on Kogi State, and INEC certainly are on the hot seat as they should be on top of the game to ensure that a free, fair, and credible election is actually carried out. And we have Safiya Bichi from Yeager Africa to join us in the coverage of the election. Good to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, Aaron.
All right, Safiya, what do you make of the electoral process today? We've been looking at the electoral process as it's played out in Kogi State, in Bayelsa, and also in Imo State. peculiarities and issues arising in different states, and there have been talks about electoral malpractices, electoral malfeasance. All right, in some of the states, of course, in Bayelsa State, in Nembe, we've heard about issues in Nembe, a local government area in Bayelsa State. We've heard about Ogorimagongo local government in Kogi State. Talk to us today.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I think I'll start with the positive part of the elections, and this is talking to the electoral process before I go into some of the critical incidents we observed, as you highlighted just a while ago. But going back to the election logistic and deployment, we saw that there was a pretty early deployment, especially in Kogi State. By 7:30, 64% of polling units we observed had polling officials. And by 9:30, over 50% of polling units in Kogi and Imo State had common accreditation and voting. We've also, our observation has also noted that there was adequate deployment of election material. Beavers were deployed in all the polling units observed. Major election materials such as indelible ink, voter register were deployed in most polling units, voting cubicles. I think we had just about 1% of polling units we observed in Imo State where indelible ink and official stamp were not deployed, and 2 to 3% of polling units in Kogi State where we had indelible ink and voting cubicle not deployed. But going to some of the negative trends we observed in the elections, these trends were caught across all the 3 states we observed. And starting with Kogi, we observed, as you highlighted a while ago, that there were polling units that had pre-filled election result forms. These were observed in Ogorimagongo and Okehe local governments of Kogi State. We've also seen that in the same Kogi State, there's a polling unit in Ofu local government where manual accreditation is being conducted. And we also, going to Imo State, we've also seen that in Imo State, there were some critical incidents. We had one polling unit I just have to remember the local government, where police refused to deploy.
Okay, Safiya.
Due to issues
all right, no, not to worry. Now let's look at this
issues
in broad terms. When you look at, of course, we are starting the collation and the counting process now. But if you're to juxtapose what you've witnessed today with what you witnessed on the 25th of February and the general election as well, what's your feel? Have we moved forward?
In terms of logistic deployment, I can say that we've done considerably well when it comes to election management, and even in terms of deployment of election material. The only challenge I would say is that in this election, there seems to be more critical incidences in these elections, and mundane things as manual accreditation have been witnessed in an election that is conducted in Nigeria in 2023. We know that we've moved past this since the last general elections, which is in 2019, where no manual accreditation is accepted in our election administration system. So it was surprising to see that. And to also see mundane things like kidnapping of INEC officials in Sagbama local government, and the boat mishap that seems to be a trend in state or governorship elections in southern edge of Bayelsa State. These are worrisome trends that one would have believed that we've gone past them when it comes to incidences and actions of different parties. And it will shock you to note that even our observers in some local governments in Imo State were even not allowed to observe. And we also recorded incidences where polling unit officials were requesting for money from party agents in order to allow them to observe the electoral process in some polling units. So these are issues that seems to be predominant and to an extent characterize some of the activities we've seen in the polling unit. But in terms of election administration, we've seen a significant improvement in logistic deployment, in commencement and deployment of sensitive and non-sensitive materials, and even in terms of deployment of security agents. We've seen that across the state, we have over 96% security deployment in all polling units observed in today's elections.
All right, Safiya, let's turn our attention to Emeka here in the studio. Emeka, certainly you've been keenly observing proceedings as it plays out. Of course, Kogi State in our focus at the moment because we've actually received live feeds from there concerning sorting and counting of those papers, like we've actually seen. And so far, so good. With all you've heard about electoral malpractices, just summarize the happenings in Kogi State for us.
Yeah, well, from what we've seen, what we've seen and heard in Kogi State, there's the elections, the governorship election has held, but there are areas that give much worry. I mean, the violence. A party supporter is said to have been killed by agents of another party, although, well, it's not yet confirmed. But the point is that, just like it was said, that in certain areas, there were security lapses. Still, the issue of the pre-filled election results, those result forms, that issue is hanging. It's a serious indictment of the entire process. I mean, ordinarily, it can lead to the cancellation of election in that area. I think INEC should just cancel the election in that polling unit or in that ward, and anywhere else such has been observed. So when we see, yes, thankfully, the election has come to an end in a number of areas and counting is taking place. But of course, between that point and the collation center, there shouldn't be any strange developments. There shouldn't be any usurpation of the will of the people, because that's what you see. You see a lot of it, has happened, a lot of that has happened in successive elections. So INEC, the onus is on INEC to make sure that it walks the talk. It has told us it doesn't have any favorite candidate in any of the states in the election. We must see that play out because people are watching. Nigerians, even though the turnout is very low, but Nigerians are also watching keenly to see if INEC can make a difference, no matter how little. I want to tell you that the confidence in INEC is very low. You can see a lot of, you can see from the reports here and there, the confidence level, INEC's confidence level has really dropped. It has even got worse today, because if INEC officials are not aligned party agents in some places, are not aligned observers in some places, then of course, what it raises the suspicion that they have ulterior motives for doing so. And that is a huge indictment on INEC. And I think INEC should come clean on all these developments. It's not just about promising we'll ensure a thorough investigation, and then at the end of the day, we don't see anything. They just gloss over it. Then if such a matter goes to the tribunal or the court, we now begin to hear some funny excuses, technicalities. They'll use technicalities to, brush those very serious allegations aside. We cannot continue this way. Nigeria must get better in terms of election management.
Now, as we talk about, us getting better at election management, I just took some time out to visit INEC's iRev portal to see, have we moved forward? Are we going in a positive direction? You look at Imo State, so far 20.89% of the results have been uploaded. So 994 out of 4,720. That's as of 3:32 p.m. November 11, 2023 on the INEC portal. So Does this inspire confidence? What does this do for you? Because again, I keep going back to, the digital component of our election because, when we look at Electoral Act 2022, this is the future. This is where we want to go. And these smaller scale elections are our opportunity to really key into these things, perfect them and be able to scale them up to a national level in future. Do you think that confidence can be built and re-inspired from this? Or do you think we're always going to discount the fact that, well, they're off-cycle elections, we're dealing with a smaller terrain, so let's rely on them for smaller elections, but when it comes to national elections, let's play by a different set of rules?
No, the rules must be the same. And I think we, like former President Goodluck Jonathan said, we need to do something about these off-cycle elections, find a way to bridge the gap so that all the elections, hold on the same. The elections hold on the same day, scheduled dates. Now, INEC, yes, so far so good. The IREV is working, as you said. But the big problem is that will INEC not come out to deny that IREV, to deny the results on the IREV? Will INEC not come out to claim that technical glitches observed in the back room of INEC, in the back room of the server, have made it to say, okay, it cannot totally rely on the IREV. Like I said, the onus is on INEC. Are they going to redeem themselves? The actions of INEC officials don't inspire confidence. Because you see, at the same time INEC is posting on IREV, you see people posting on social media. All different results are coming out as we speak. So, if at the end of the day, we see that INEC is coming up with the same excuses, okay, this happened and that happened, and then we have to travel the same route all over again, then I'm afraid in future elections, the turnout will be worse.
All right, let's turn attention to Safiya right now in Abuja. And Safiya, we've spoken about hitches in this particular election. My question is, what are the consequences for these lapses we've seen in these local governments we've mentioned? You've mentioned one in Imo, you've mentioned Nembe in Bayelsa, you've mentioned Ogore-Magongo in Kogi State. What will be the consequence of all these hitches and lapses in the overall scheme of things?
Yeah, for me, I'm of the opinion that INEC should cancel elections in those locations, and especially for those elections that have pre-filled result sheets. Elections should be organized on a later day. It can be tomorrow, so that the voters there will be allowed to exercise their franchise. And for those polling units that conducted manual accreditation, of course, elections in those polling units should be cancelled. Then for other polling units where probably elections were not cancelled, but thank God for the one in Southern Asia, the citizens and voters there were able to salvage the issue that happened with the boat mishap. And I believe that elections were conducted duly. But to go again to touch on the issue around elections results percentage on the IREF at the moment by 3 p.m., I think perhaps it's because, and in Imo State, election didn't kick off very, very quickly in that region, even though we mentioned that over 50% of polling units started by 9:30. But we've always encouraged INEC to extend voting time on election day to allow all voters that are out to vote on election to exercise their franchise. For me, we need to do beyond engagement. All stakeholders' engagement should go beyond election day, and the stakeholders' engagement should go back to political education. Lots of things are happening, issues of polling party agents, community members, polling unit officials requesting for money. These are some things we need. This needs beyond sanctioning, some kind of reorientation process. I think after these elections, before the off-cycle elections that will be coming up next year, we need to look at and invest in political and civic education. Perhaps it will build some level of consciousness among citizens and a change in attitude when it comes to engaging not just the electoral space, but the political and governance space in the country.
Is education enough to enfranchise and empower people to defy the odds? You know, there are some countries where you witness, such a perseverance. Let me not even say some countries. Even if you look at the spirit that we saw in Nigeria at the beginning of the year for the general election, we saw resilience, we saw patriotism, we saw a passion to make a contribution and to have your vote be counted, which again, time and time again, we conscientize people and try to get the call to action, to get people to come out and participate. So is it an education issue, or is it that people are just becoming disillusioned? Because, like you said, it's a recurring story and recurring incidents over and over again, time and time. So do you think this is really an education issue, or is it really time for us to push for more of a systemic change?
Yeah, when it comes to attitudinal change, there's always an arm of education, sensitization that assists in changing people's attitude. I understand that there are some systemic issues, but you also agree with me that some of these actions, enthusiasm, young people, a lot of people demonstrate on social media does not translate to actionable or physical actions. And I agree and understand with people when they say that young people, lots of people were very willing to vote and make their vote count. But if you look at the numbers is not translating. That level of action we saw in the pre-election environment is not translated into the turnout we saw in the last elections. And perhaps we can also say that that's another form of political participation. But again, for people that believe that live in an election, in a democratic society, and we know that no matter the population or number of people that turns out to vote, the votes of those people must count. They will be the decider of our system. We should not rule out political education. We should not rule out sensitization. But again, we should also, on the other hand, engage in the activity of holding leaders accountable. After election, what happens? Should we go back to sleep? We need to hold those political leaders accountable so that they will be able to benefit from some of the dividend of democracy that is being preached all over the world, and again to ensure that the right people are the right people are the ones in government.
All right, Emeka. Let's talk about. You've mentioned logistics, but in light of what happened yesterday in Bayelsa State, we're happy that the citizens there were able to help salvage the situation, but to avoid future occurrence. How do we put in processes, especially for areas in Delta states, in Bayelsa State, in River State, whereby there are creeks and you have navigating those places are not as easy as ABC?
Well, the responsibility lies with the security agencies. They know all these places. They know these nooks and crannies. When politicians want to campaign, they are able to get to all these places we think are inaccessible. So how come the security agencies, in their numbers, thousands of them, cannot get to these areas? Particularly in Bayelsa State, Nembe has been a recurring problem in terms of violence. In terms of violence, that's been a recurring problem. Why have the security agencies not been able to do something really serious about putting down the violence in Nembe? Is it because, I mean, they want us to believe that it's inaccessible? No, it is not. So it's not enough for, you see, the DIGs.
I'm also even talking about the force majeure, which was the incident that happened, because I'm sure no one legislated for that. That's probably they would have a boats literally capsized that were carrying sensitive materials. Yeah,
but how could a boat have been carrying sensitive materials? Well, now, there was no escort. the boat capsized. What arrangement was put in place in the event of such an occurrence? That is one major problem we have in logistics management as it relates to government, as it relates to public institutions. It's not just about moving materials in different directions. What fallback plan, what backup plan do you have to ensure that if there is any hitch, if there is any problem, how do you rescue the people? How do you rescue the people involved? How do you ensure that the materials can be salvaged? You see, when we keep expecting ordinary Nigerians who have been ravaged and damaged by hunger, poverty, to always rise to the occasion to confront violent armed thugs, to confront such situations, then, of course, we are not being fair. Let's make our public officials do the work for which they have been put in office. Security agencies must be responsible to the extent that they can secure the people. They can secure our votes, they can secure INEC officials, they can secure INEC voting election materials. Otherwise, all this talk about we are deploying 20,000, 50,000, 100,000 will make no meaning to Nigerians at all. We must see results. And as it stands, it's unfortunate. I know in some places, I know there was an incident where it was said that some thugs wanted to kidnap, wanted to abduct some election officials. But there was also another incident where party supporters battered each other, while election materials were being distributed. All these things should not be at all. If we want to really believe that there is no partisanship on the part of anybody, these things should not occur. I mean, these talks are not more powerful than the state. These are non-state actors who can be easily contained. But when the security agencies choose to look the other way for certain reasons, then how do you inspire the confidence of Nigerians to come out to vote? Nobody wants to die. Nobody wants to come, to be a victim of election violence. So that desperation needs to be curbed. Security agencies must be seen to be independent, to be impartial, to be unbiased, and they must also stay steps ahead of people who want to subvert the electoral process.
Right. Now back to you in Abuja, Safiya. In the general election, 94% of the elections that took place ended up in court. Of course, this is the constitutional way. However, how can we mitigate the situation we find ourselves in where candidates themselves, now we're not talking about their followers, their supporters, candidates themselves seem to be disillusioned by the process?
Yeah, so there are different factors that leads to some of this outcome or reactions we see in every post-election environment. Some is that they believe that they won the election. Some is that they believe that they've been rigged out of the election. Some they believe that there's a window of opportunity for them to get the elections from the other side. And these are some of the issues we have. But again, there's a school of thought that believes that the reason why our elections always end up in court, even in situations where you know that this is a clear winner of the election, is the fact that our electoral system is a winner takes all. So if you lose everything. And if you know the huge investment that goes into every election, especially in the presidential system of elections like ours, you understand why people always want to try their luck to see if they could emerge victory even outside after the polls. You've seen a lot of press statements from different people after the court rulings, appeal court rulings, be it from the state assemblies, National Assembly, and even some executive offices. We've seen parties that were not favored by the court ruling coming out to make statements of disagreement with the court rulings. These are all indicators and consequences of the winner takes all in the political system. But if it was a system, and this, I think, should be a conversation for another day, but if the system is a proportional system that perhaps require some fraction of votes gotten in an election to be in either elective or appointive offices, maybe the case might be different. Then again, coming from our history, this is one of the things that I believe will be very difficult. And in other clients, you don't see people flooding to court after elections. And we also understand the economic impact of it. There are times that lawyers themselves approach these parties and tell them that there's a window we can explore to win some of these elections. And you, even though a non-lawyer, sometimes when you read the petitions of some of these candidates or in some of these elections, you'll be wondering if they really were really serious about reclaiming the mandate they said they're going to reclaim. These are situations we find ourselves, but what we can always do is strengthen our electoral systems. Go back, it's the post-election time now, go back to review what are the gaps in our legal framework vis-a-vis the election administration in the last general election, vis-a-vis some of the court pronouncement of the courts from the court judgments in the tribunals and also some of the appeals we've seen. And outside that is to also continue to strengthen our public institutions that are responsible for managing and supporting election day administration. Perhaps by doing that, we'll reduce, there will be a reduction in some level of election litigation that is becoming a norm in our political system.
All right. Emeka, she's spoken about making the process better, and we've seen things play out. Of course, there will be hiccup. There is no perfect election anywhere in the world. We should be able to make incremental improvements. And for all we've seen, as sorting, counting is actually going on right now. Some have even looked at it and said, already they can even say that Dino and his lawyers are already warming up to actually hit the tribunal based on all that has actually happened. And the SDP also in the state are saying that what happens to those places where electoral materials were missing. And you look at all this, and if you try to put it into a mixing bowl, now the big question that comes up from it is, what will be your message to INEC at this point in time? Because we will still be having off-cycle elections in 2024. And certainly, this is a learning process. How do we get it better?
It's very simple. Once we're committed to making the electoral process work, we'll get it right. The laws are there. There are sufficient laws to, yes, commitment to the extent that INEC knows that, INEC came out to say it doesn't have any favorite, any candidate in any of the elections. But we rightfully so, but it should make sure that that is seen, not just heard, we see it happening. INEC officials, whether full-time staff, substantive staff, or ad hoc officials, must must know that they cannot compromise any part of the elections. We're talking about Kogi State. Yes, there have been pockets of violence here and there, and INEC said that it will cancel the results of any polling unit where there's been violence. I think we need to see that being done. Then, again, politicians, the desperation is so much. It's horrible. Politicians want, because politics, of course, is the most lucrative venture in Nigeria today. People go into politics, they do or die affair. Whether they kill people, destroy things, whatever, they just don't care. So we must take that incentive, which is for people to go into office to loot public resources. Because it's basically not about service, going to offer service. It's more about going to enjoy benefits, going to loot the treasury. So we must find a way to remove that incentive so that people, for instance, in certain places like maybe the National Assembly, are on part-time. They are not there on full-time. They are on part-time. There are certain benefits that also should be removed from executive offices. Then, if you say that the minimum wage is 30,000, of course, like it has been said, politicians should not be able to enjoy such humongous benefits, huge salaries, while you give the ordinary worker, 18,000, 30,000. There must be that balance. We must recalibrate the system so that all of us can feel the heat. Then you will see that this desperation will stop. Again, you see, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is there in the saddle as the president. So it lies on his table to make sure that the electoral process becomes transparent and credible. He knows all the controversies that attended his declaration as the winner of the 2023 presidential election. And I believe he has at the back of his mind, if there's any legacy, one major legacy he must have in mind is that to clean up the electoral process. It's not just about helping your party to win. Let's remember that there was a time PDP was the dominant party in Nigeria. Today, APC is the dominant party. In future, any other party could be the dominant party. So all of these efforts, if you just make all these efforts, you allow people, desperate politicians to just kill people, destroy things. What about all that? After all said and done, another party gets on the stage and sweeps you aside. What would you have gained? I think our leaders must have at the back of their mind, what legacy am I leaving in office? It's not a legacy of building mansions and having huge bank accounts. No, looting the treasury, no. They must have that legacy at the back of their mind, that children to be born in the next 100 years can say, okay, such and such and such a person tried their best to give Nigeria credible leadership. We remember the late President Yar'Adua said he will do something about the electoral process. Unfortunately, he couldn't.
On that very profound note, listen, so many valid points there, Emeka, Madunagu. Thank you so much for your time, your input, your insights, and of course from Abuja, Safiya, Bichi. Thank you so much, Ovi Yaga, Africa. Thank you so much for your contribution.